good evening, my friends and family in Rotary. I didn't know this was the last session for this Rotary year. I feel very honored and privileged. Thank you very much. I know this was something that was going to be discussed at the conference, but you ran out of time, and I actually think it's better because now I'm able to deliver it in person, and hopefully we can have a bit of a conversation after the presentation. So let's get straight into it. Let's hope that I share the right screen. Oop-de-doo, here we go. Okay, so the Council on Legislation. What I'd like to do is first of all just give you a bit of the context, what the council actually is, and then I'm going to go through some of the key resolutions that will impact our clubs from 1st of July this year. So did my slide change? Good. All right. Thank you, Sonia. Okay, so there's a Council on Legislation, and then there's the Council on Resolutions. So let's just start with the latter. Council on Resolutions is an annual event that is held virtually. So in the current cycle, there are 3 councils on resolutions. And this is where Rotarians, through their district representatives, clubs, district governors, past district governors, whomever's a member of Rotary, review resolutions and urgent enactments on the Council on Resolutions voting site. And the last time we did this was last October, so there'll be another one this October. So typically from about the middle of October to the middle of November, the representatives are asked to vote, and then these decisions are published typically by the end of November. So there is an annual Council on Resolutions. It's all done virtually. In fact, even before COVID, it was done virtually. And it's where we get a chance to look at a myriad of different proposals and resolutions from Rotary clubs and districts around the world. But more importantly, what they call urgent enactments, which by the name you realize something that cannot wait for the 3-year Council on Legislation. So what happens is that every district in the Rotary world nominates a representative, a past district governor, who will then vote on the resolutions that are proposed by clubs, districts, the board of Rotary International, or even the General Council. We had a number of resolutions this year that actually came from the administration of Rotary International, the General Secretary. And of course, RIBI, which is Rotary International Great Britain, or the board of Rotary may submit an urgent enactment. So sometimes, for example, with the war in Ukraine, which is being dealt with currently, the board of RI will make an urgent decision for a period of time that funds from global grants, or they'll set up a separate fund, a special fund to raise money for Ukraine. That is not an urgent enactment. All of these enactments and resolutions fundamentally change the way that our clubs and our districts and our Rotary entire governance structure is organized. So the board does have the discretion from time to time and the authority to create new funds and divert funds, etc., as it sees fit. That's not what this is about. And that will become clear when I go through some of the resolutions. So what happens is each district nominates a past district governor for a 3-year term. So essentially, the representative has the opportunity to serve on 3 Council on Resolutions, vote every year for 3 years, and 1 Council on Legislation. The districts are required to nominate a past district governor and an alternate. If for any reason the representative cannot attend or participate, the alternate is meant to step in. And it's really a mandatory representation, because no district in the Rotary world should say, we didn't know, we weren't involved, we were not included in a decision that affects their clubs. So it is a mandatory participation for the nominated representative to actually actively be involved in both the COR and the COL. So just to clarify the 2 definitions, the resolutions are requests to either the board of Rotary International or the trustees of our foundation to take an action outside our club constitutional documents. As you know, every Rotary club has a constitution and bylaws. Rotary International has a constitution and bylaws. So these are resolutions that affect typically the whole Rotary world, rather than, let's say, just Rotary in the Caribbean, or that's very specific to Rotary in Ukraine. This would be a global resolution, a global change. And then there are urgent enactments which are proposed by the Board of Rotary that are constitutional changes. So this fundamentally changes the way that our clubs are run. And as I said, these cannot wait for the 3-year cycle. These have to be done on an annual basis. So we have resolutions that we have to look at that can come from anywhere in the Rotary world. And we have enactments which come from the RI board. And I have to share with you that this was my first experience as our district representative. So a lot of the terminology, it takes a little while to get the hang of it. And just as you figured it all out, your term comes to an end. But it's really took some time to understand the process and what's required and what things mean. And I feel like I've got a better grasp of it now, but very important to understand the distinction. But most significantly, to know that any club in the Rotary world can propose a resolution. There were none from our district in this particular iteration of the Council on Legislation. But if I get the opportunity to go back again, I certainly will be canvassing our clubs for some suggestions so that we get a little bit more involved. So the Council on Resolutions is annual. The Council on Legislation is every 3 years. This last Council on Legislation was held in Chicago, of course, the home of Rotary, and it was held in April of this year. Because of COVID, a number of our delegates could not attend in person. Of course, you would know that if we have PDGs from the African countries, for example, they're still struggling to get their hands on the COVID vaccine. So what we actually had was 325 delegates in person and 198 virtual delegates. And then, of course, members of the Rotary Board, the General Secretary, the Presiding Council, and so on. And there were 92 enactments that were presented to us for consideration. Of those 92, 14 were withdrawn by the proposing clubs or districts, 29 were passed by the council, and 49 failed. The very first slide, you would have seen a little machine with Rotary on. That was our voting device. So essentially, a resolution or an enactment is put up on the screen. You've, of course, been given all this information beforehand. You are supposed to vote the way your district has told you to vote. There is a little bit of debate, a couple of arguments for, a couple of arguments against. The district or clubs that propose the enactment make a statement about why they're making this proposal. And then we vote a very simple yes or no. So based on that voting system, the actual event is about 3.5 days. It's full days, except for the last day, which ended just around lunchtime. So it's quite intense. The entire event is held in 7 languages. So there's a lot of translation, simultaneous translation, and so on going. And so it's really a very intense experience to be in the room with so many Rotarians from around the world, the Asian countries, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and to hear their challenges and why they're making these different proposals, some of the things that are going on in their part of the world. So a big change that happened this year, which I'm not presenting as a resolution for us, but just to give you an idea, is that Rotary in Australia, New Zealand, and England, Scotland, and Wales, has not grown. In fact, their membership is diminishing annually. And so they brought a proposal, those clubs and districts got together to ask permission to run a pilot program for 6 years to completely change the way they do Rotary. Doesn't affect us at all. It's a pilot for the British and Australian clubs. But there was a lot of conversation around it. Eventually it passed, and they are now going to be embarking on this pilot because they're really facing some severe membership challenges. Not bringing in new members, not bringing in young members, and so on, which thankfully is not a challenge that we face too much here in the Caribbean. So very interesting to hear what's going on in the Rotary world, different challenges faced by different clubs in different parts of the world. So let's take a closer look at the enactments that I have selected that I think will have the most impact on our clubs in District 7030. So I'm not going to go through all of the ones that were passed, just those that I think are I feel are best, most important for our clubs. And you need to know these because from July the 1st, you will have to start amending your constitution and bylaws. I'm sure that Rotary International will put out new templates, but you need to make sure that your club's aware that these changes are coming. You basically have a month to get ready. So, number 7. This was actually quite early. So they're numbered in order in which they came to the council. Okay, so this was an early one. And this amends the standard Rotary Club Constitution, Article 7, Section 3, to read that written minutes of a board meeting must be available to all club members within 30 days of that board meeting. We currently either kind of get minutes when we get them, don't necessarily make them available to all members of our club. So the constitution of your club will have to change, and your secretary needs to be aware that now the club, the board, the secretary must provide minutes, or at the very least let members know where they can be found within 30 days of a board meeting. Lots of conversation about this. It didn't pass with a huge majority, but it did pass and is now Rotary law, for want of a better phrase. Number 10. This amends articles, and you'll see quite often a reference to each club, which of course is Rotary Club, and then it differentiates Rotaract Club. But in many cases, the two are now joined, and the same rules apply to both Rotary and Rotaract. So in your club, in Rotary International bylaws, Article 4.07, they have now added equity and inclusion. So our statement used to end at diversity, and they've now added equity and inclusion. We had a number of different amendments around DE&I. You know, it's a very big topic for Rotary at the moment, that clubs should build balanced, diverse, inclusive, and equitable membership. And I think, again, we're doing quite well in the Caribbean, but we do still have many clubs that are not doing a great job in this area. And this should form the basis for your membership recruitment drive, induction, all of that. You need to really make sure that your Rotary Club truly reflects the society that you serve and truly can call itself a diverse, equitable, inclusive club. So that's now going to be amended in the RI bylaws. That's number 10. Number 13, the original Article 5, Section 2 required a Rotarian to either live or work in the locality of their club. So just in Trinidad, for example, very often a member would say, somebody would say, I'm interested in Rotary. We would say, well, where do you live? Well, I live in the East. Okay, well, so maybe you should join a club in the East of Trinidad or in South or what have you. This has now been scrapped, and it will now allow Rotarians to be members of clubs anywhere in the world, regardless where they live or work. Now, of course, this has really come as a result of the e-clubs and virtual membership during COVID. But even without that, if you live in Georgetown and you want to be a member of Rotary Club of Las Vegas, you can join. Pay the dues, be on the board, you know, do what you have to do. So there's no longer going to be this restriction that you must live or work in the geographic area of the Rotary Club. And this then impacts Article 13, Section 2 of a Rotary Club constitution. So this basically amends that section, right? So essentially, if you read the original constitution, it talks about the fact that membership can be terminated if the person leaves the geographic area. So if I am a member of a Rotary Club in Trinidad and I migrate, my membership is terminated in my Rotary Club in Trinidad. That no longer applies. I can live and work anywhere in the world and be a Rotarian in Trinidad, which is great for our district as well, because as people move around the world, they can still retain their membership in their home club, their original club. Number 14 is carrying on from this whole idea, and this allows Rotarians and Rotaractors to propose members for any club. So again, traditionally, what we would typically do would be look for members for our own club, although I have from time to time recommended people, of course, to other clubs. But it now means you don't just recommend, you can actually propose a member. Fill in the forms, download the membership application, whatever it is that club has. So I, as a Rotarian in Port of Spain, could propose somebody for membership in the Rotary Club of Antigua or the Rotary Club of Barbados. I need to find some women that I propose to membership in the all boys clubs and see how that goes. So this is something that you're going to have to change in your bylaws. It will allow your members to propose anybody that they like, who they think meets the criteria of being a good Rotarian, to membership in any club. And then it also, enactment number 15 amends the standard Rotary Club constitution to allow a Rotarian to simultaneously be a member of Rotary, a Rotary Club and a Rotary Satellite Club. At the moment, you can only be one or the other. This has been changed, so you now can belong to both. Similarly, for Rotaractors being able to be in Rotaract and Rotary at the same time. You have to obviously meet the membership criteria of both clubs, pay your dues to both clubs, etc. But for Rotarians who travel a great deal, work online a lot, who are interested in experiencing Rotary in a different part of the world, they now have the opportunity to be members in two clubs at the same time, a Rotary Club and a Satellite Club. So your constitution, your bylaws will need to be amended to reflect these changes. Article 18, which is a huge deal. You're seeing the picture of the Rotaractors, yes? Lovely. Article 18, I keep saying article, enactment number 18 amends the RI bylaws to allow Rotaractors onto Rotary International committees. This is a huge deal. So anybody who followed the last Council on Legislation in 2019 would know that there were lots of changes around the engagement of Rotaract, due in no insignificant part because of former President Barry Racine, who's very much like our District 7020, very pro-Rotaract. But this year, what we did is we've amended the bylaws of Rotary International to allow the directors of RI to bring Rotaractors into our Rotary International committees. And that's huge opportunity for Rotaractors to be part of decision-making in Rotary at the very highest level. And I truly hope that some of our Rotaractors have that opportunity to be engaged at that level. So that was a big one, resounding unanimous consent for that. Although, interestingly, many districts of the world have almost no experience of Rotaract. So this doesn't affect them at all. For us, it's a big deal, but there are many, many districts that simply have one or two or no Rotaract clubs. So it's almost an alien concept to them. Enactment number 27. This was an interesting one. There was a lot of conversation about this. And this enables the Board of Rotary International to remove a Rotarian's past officer status. So an example of this would be, as a past district governor, if I did something that Rotary International felt was against what it meant to be a Rotarian, I acted inconsistently with our code of conduct or was indeed caught in a criminal activity, that of course I would be dealt with in the jurisdiction, my own club and so on. But this allows Rotary to strip me of my former officer status. So that means then I could stay in Rotary if I was acquitted or it was a minor charge and I came back and I joined Rotary again or what have you, but I could never again be referred to as past district governor. So there was a past district governor in Pakistan who Rotary International had conducted an investigation. He was accused of rigging an election for a district governor. Very interesting, in their districts, some of these districts in India and Pakistan, all the members of the Rotarians of the district vote on who the district governor should be. It's a virtual vote. There are 2 or 3 candidates, and it's done a simple voting process. This particular PDG was accused of rigging the election to get his friend to be the governor. And when RI investigated, they found that he had in fact done that. So they haven't stripped his Rotary membership, which to me was rather strange, but they have stripped his past officer status. So it's really the sort of shame of, you know, having lost the status that you've earned as a past governor or even past president of Rotary International. And this is also true if you take up a lawsuit against Rotary. So if you were to sue Rotary for something, discrimination or something of that nature, then the board now is authorized to strip you of your past status. There was a lot of dialogue about whether that officer should receive a fair hearing, you know, be given the opportunity to defend themselves and so on. And I think we all came to the conclusion that the RI board would not take a decision like this lightly, that there would be, you know, is it fair to all concerned? It would be done fairly, transparently and so on before a final decision was made. And this will not happen very often, I'm sure, I hope. Then there's enactment number 38. And this amends the bylaws of Rotary International, allowing the board of Rotary to suspend or terminate a Rotary or Rotaract club that initiates litigation against RI, the foundation, or the district. So if you were to sue our district, if your club was to sue our district for something, then this enactment allows the board to terminate your club. So if you know anything at all about the way that RI works currently, that termination of a club or suspension of a club is typically done at the district level, and RI very, very rarely gets involved. The districts are relatively autonomous, the clubs are autonomous and so on. But what this is allowing Rotary International directors to do is to actually either suspend or terminate your club if you, as a club, or even if you have a member of your club who initiates litigation against one of our organizations. But again, there would be a hearing, there would be investigations and all of these things. So these are not decisions taken lightly, as it says, before exhausting all remedies. But a very interesting development because it does give RI a little bit more power than it currently has. Number 46, this was the really big topic of the Council on Legislation this year. We were given the 5-year financial forecast by the Board of Directors of Rotary International, and they showed us a number of different scenarios. If our dues remain the same, if we increase them by 50 cents, $1, $1.50, and so on. And very heated debates. I was very involved in this particular conversation on behalf of our district. But at the end of the day, the council has voted, the council has spoken. And so your dues to RI will be increased from July 1 this year. And they go up in increments. So for July of this year, they will be $35.50 per member per half year. So make sure that you've informed your members about this. You know, really make sure they understand when they get the invoice what's happened and why. If anybody wants a copy of the 5-year financial forecast, I have it. Be very happy to share it with you if you wanted to share it with your members and help them understand the big picture. Of course, with COVID, there was some real impacts on fundraising and other different areas of Rotary operations. But at the same time, there was less travel. So they did save money with doing RI conventions and training and so on virtually. But it's very interesting to have a look at the forecast, some of their costs going up and so on. So if you'd like a copy of that, absolutely no problem, I can send that to you. So brace yourselves, make sure your members are fully aware that dues will go up from July 1. There were a couple of other proposals from the Board of Rotary International around modernizing and streamlining the constitution of Rotary. And these were all pretty much adopted without any debate. They are essentially tidying up language. There are no substantive changes. But when you see the new RI Constitution, it hopefully will be a lot less wordy, easier to read. And of course, this is also important because we have a lot of Rotaractors now becoming Rotarians. You want to make it as easy as possible for anybody, new members, different languages, all of the different stakeholders to understand the Constitution of Rotary International. And interestingly, it has barely changed since 1992. There's a lot of repetition in there. It's not terribly user-friendly. So the goal is here that they will modernize and streamline it. And at some point, we will receive the new version of the Constitution. And then, of course, you can adapt wording in your own club constitution to align yourself with RI. Enactment number 78. This is, again, a number of enactments around peace. So we had, the way that they do it is they put all of the enactments in sort of thematic groups. So there were a number of them around membership, a number around Rotaract, and then peace and positive peace was a big chunk. DE&I was a big chunk. So now your standard club constitution, Article 6, would be amended by adding the words positive peace at the end of community service. So essentially, we're not just using the word peace anymore, we're using the phrase positive peace. And those of us that have attended anything by DGND, Debbie would know that positive peace and the work that Rotary is doing in this area is very much a part of not just now, but our future, how we phrase our projects and so on. So everything you're doing that's around peace, it's positive peace. I'm not going to describe it, you know what it is, but make sure wherever you see the word peace, you insert the word positive before in your avenues of service. Number 84, this was very interesting. This also allows Rotaractors to attend regular or satellite meeting clubs. So the current bylaw, Article 4.09, just speaks to Rotarians, and that has been amended to add Rotaractors being able to attend regular or satellite meetings. And then number 85, this came from the Japanese Rotarians. A number of districts in Japan nominated in different wording the removal of our mandatory attendance report. So Article 4.08 currently requires that every club submit an attendance report. But we all know that most of us haven't done that for years. And we all know that we don't talk about attendance now, we talk about engagement. And we use Rotary Club Central to measure our volunteer hours and so on. And so essentially the idea is that the monthly attendance report is not really practical anymore. It doesn't reflect what Rotary clubs are doing these days. It doesn't mean that you can't continue to submit one if you want. The district governor may ask for one, that's absolutely fine, but it's not going to be mandatory anymore. And certainly I know in my club, you know, we didn't really track attendance for the 2 years during COVID. And even before that, we barely do. At some events we might, but not as a regular thing. So the nice thing about this is it's going to be your choice. The district governor can decide if he or she wishes this to be something that they use as a guide for helping clubs, but it will not be mandatory anymore. So you'll amend 4.08. Article 92 amends the enactment 92, amends Article 10 of your standard club constitution. This is the 85 rule. So you'll know that any member of Rotary whose age plus years of service is 85 or more, typically the way it's done now is they apply for being excused from attendance and the board would approve. This requirement for board approval has been removed. So now if you have a Rotarian in your club where their age plus their years of service is 85 or more, they just need to tell the club that they wish to be excused from attendance requirements. The board does not need to approve it anymore. So just removing one more bureaucratic thing that the club needs to worry about. So if you have any members who are approaching this 85 threshold, it's important to let them know that they can just notify the club. So those are the ones I felt were most relevant to our clubs. You can, however, oppose any resolution, and you do have a couple of months if you wish to review and submit an opposition. This is what the opposition form looks like. It has to get to Evanston by the 1st of August. And you are, it should be your club decision, not you as an individual member. You return the form. So if there's anything that has been approved by the Council on Legislation that your club opposes, you can submit this form and indicate to them the number of votes that were taken, the number of votes that your club has. So 22 under number 1, 22 is the year of the Council on Legislation. So it would be enactment 22-17, for example, or -38 that you would be opposing. And you don't even have to say why. You can just say our club opposes this resolution. So on that note, I just wanted to share a few photographs of the actual council in session. Lots of old white people, as you can see, lots of North American, Canadian, European, Australian, British, and of course, a lot of our Asian members joined us virtually. So this is one of the PDGs from Japan. We had Korea, Taiwan, and so on. It was really quite a wonderful experience. And if you would like a copy of the full report with all of the resolutions, so I've only highlighted a few, but there were others, as well as the financial forecast or the opposition form. If you would like any of that information, just send me an email. It's all available. I do not have the full report yet in French. It is coming. I'm not sure when, but I will certainly follow up, but I definitely have it in English. So if you'd like to see and to share with your club all of the resolutions that were passed, please just send me an email and I'd be very happy to share that with you. So I'm going to stop there and very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, PDG Lara. There are no questions in the chat. However, there's a comment that I find to be quite, oh no, there are a few questions. Now I'm seeing it. But I see a comment here from Leah. And she said if there's a legitimate claim, a Rotarian should be able to sue Rotary without fear of backlash. She finds this to be intimidating and borderline duress. I have to say, when you were reading that resolution, similar thoughts ran through my mind. What are your feelings on it? What were you thinking when this resolution was passing?
So I think it was really meant to prevent frivolous lawsuits. Now you'll remember, we won't remember necessarily, but you'll know, for example, that Rotary International was sued all the way up to the Supreme Court in the United States to allow women to be members. And Sylvia Whitlock is the first female member, still very alive and active in Rotary. So I believe it is meant to be a deterrent to frivolous, unsubstantial lawsuits or legal action against a district or Rotary or the Rotary Foundation. And as I said, because we live by the four-way test, I don't think Rotary International would arbitrarily, terminate a club or strip an officer of their past status without really thoroughly doing a due diligence. And you would definitely, I'm sure, have the right to appeal. It would probably be very well ventilated. In this particular case with the Pakistani past district governor, he was allowed at the council, well, not him personally, but a Rotarian lawyer spoke on his behalf. And then there was another Rotarian who spoke sort of for and against, like a bit like a trial. And the RI board deliberated and gave their judgment. So I understand what you're saying, but I think it's meant to be to deter frivolity. I don't know if they've had frivolous lawsuits, and so this is why they're now putting it into place. But it's certainly, I think they would always be fair. I don't believe that the board of RI would just sort of arbitrarily terminate a club without really examining all sides of the situation. So I don't think, and hopefully none of us have anything to worry about.
Fair enough. I mean, we have a club here that was sued by a member, and I mean, it's frivolous, but it's in the courts, still an active case. So I could understand that thinking.
Well, this is, yeah, so this is
Rotarian-
if an individual sues the district or the foundation or the RI board, not a club, right? The RI board wouldn't necessarily get involved at a club level, I don't think, unless maybe the governor asked. I'm not sure.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that the thinking of why this had to be done is similar.
Right. Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah.
So Rotarian Cash is asking, was there a solid vote for the membership increase?
Was there a, sorry, what, solid vote? Is it vote? Let me see if I, oh, Luana's frozen.
Yes, solid vote.
A solid vote.
Majority.
Right. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the final votes were. That is in the final report. So I can send that to you if you want, just drop me an email. And those of you that want the slides as well, I mean, I'll send them to Luana tomorrow, but you can certainly ask for that. What I do remember with the vote on the dues is that there was a lot of opposition from clubs, obviously the Caribbean, clubs in the developing parts of the world, the sort of Southern Hemisphere. So those of us in those parts of the world, there was a lady who stood up, an American PDG, and she was saying, so if you look at the difference between year 1 and year 4, it's $8. It ends up being $8, I think, at the end of the day, or $7 or something like that. And she stood up and said, you know, it's only the cost of a cup of coffee. And I stood up and I said, well, actually, $8 US is, you know, about 1,000 Guyanese, and I did all the equations, all the different Caribbean currencies, and the whole room just sort of went silent. And, you know, so we're trying to get across the point that what's $8 for you in America, that's a lot of money for us in the Caribbean, or certainly for some of our younger members or our retired members and so on. But at the end of the day, it passed because, you know, I was of the view, and I expressed this at the council, that rather than increase the dues, we should increase the membership, and our focus should be on growing more members. But that's not happening in a lot of parts of the world. Rotary's membership is pretty stagnant. We are one of the few districts where it's actually growing. So with that in mind, unless something radical happened in the next 5 years, they couldn't basically sustain themselves. So, but if you want the forecast and you want to understand the voting on that, I'm happy to send it to you. I can't remember off the top of my head. And the actual amounts, I saw Ken, I think it is, asked about the actual amounts. Those are based on the forecast as well, Ken. That came from John Huco, the General Secretary, the Board of RI. So yeah, it's not like it's $1 a year, or so, it's slightly arbitrary, but it is based on their forecast. So I can send that if you wish it.
Great, thank you. Liz would like to know what can trigger a withdrawal. Examples of what can trigger a withdrawal.
What do you mean by withdrawal? What did I say that was a withdrawal? Liz?
Liz, go ahead, Liz. Liz, you're muted.
Okay.
Yes. Go.
All right. No, remember you mentioned about those enactments that were you mentioned at the beginning, at the beginning you mentioned those that were adopted and those withdrawn.
Right.
Why? Because I've always been reading about this withdrawal. And I'm thinking, because going through that, I remember going through it one year and they said a whole lot of things. We go all this way and then we withdraw.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's rather strange. So if you look at all, when we first got our book with all 90 something resolutions, and as I said, they're sort of lumped together, membership dues, Rotary, they're all in sort of sections. And there's a remarkable number that are almost identical. So one district in Japan will say attendance report should be optional. Another district in Japan will say attendance report should be removed. Another district in Japan will say the attendance report should be weekly. So, but they're all kind of asking for the same sort of thing. So what happens is, when we get to the COL and we look through it, somebody will make, the person who has nominated that resolution And if you nominate a resolution, you have to attend COL to defend why you've done that, right? Before we even get to voting, they will let the chair know, or they'll just stand up and say, my district has withdrawn this resolution because it is too similar to the next one, and we'll let our colleagues in Tokyo handle it, or Taiwan or whatever. Yeah. So that's really it. Or the only other thing is if it's really against something that the RI board is proposing. And one of the things that I felt it was my first time, and I mean, I'm a bit of a goody two shoes, so I made loads of notes and was putting my hand up all over the place and speaking constantly, but I wanted to get the full, immersive experience. But I felt that in a number of cases, the RI board proposed a change. The RI board were there, the president, Shekhar, everybody was there. And it's very difficult to stand up and speak out against the president of Rotary International. Do you know what I mean? Like, does anybody oppose President Shekhar wants to charge you more for membership? And we all sort of sat there and went, and they go, who's that girl from the Caribbean? Where is she? So I was like, oh my God. So it kind of feels a bit intimidating. You don't want to go up against the board. So I felt on a couple of occasions, and there was a PDG from Canada who I was sat next to, we both felt they should leave the room when their resolutions were being debated, just to allow us the freedom. It's like teachers out of the room, so you could have a free, open conversation. So there are a couple of moments like that. But yeah, so that was the withdrawal thing. People just withdrew because they felt it was too similar to another resolution, typically.
Thank
Vincent,
you.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I was reading the questions. Go ahead.
Kenneth Voodoo would like to know what's the rationale for the dues, the increment. 35.50 and not 36, and then 39.25, blah, blah, blah.
Right, so that's based on the 5-year forecast, which, as I said, I have a copy of and I'm happy to share. I think they try and make it as palatable as possible, not rounding things up. But yeah, that's an RI board. They didn't really go into any detail about how they came up with the actual figures, other than against their forecast.
Okay. And then we have a question here from Vincent. Can someone lose their PHF for the same reason? This is in reference to titles being stripped for infractions.
No, no. As far as I know, Vincent, a Paul Harris is something that in some cases, you've purchased, you've given to the foundation, or gift has been made in your name. And so that's different from an honorary or an earned title like past district governor, I believe, because you've made that gift, that money's been spent. So you could still be a major donor or a Paul Harris or Arch Clump. Although if you've got to that point where Rotary is stripping you of your past officer status, I think it's highly unlikely you would stay within Rotary anyway. I can't, if you've got to that point that, you're sort of the shame of the Rotary world, I don't know that you'd stay in, but your giving to the foundation would remain in your name as long as you remain a Rotarian. That's my understanding of it.
Thank you, PDG. Rotarian Judy would like to know if it's still mandatory for clubs to maintain attendance records.
No, that's going to be up to the club, Judy. So in my club, as I said, I can tell you that we have not kept attendance records for 2 years. I was last club secretary in 2018. I think that's the last year that we ever had attendance. We haven't done it for a long time. From certain events, we don't do 100% anymore. We don't do any of that anymore. We just look at engagement and hope, some people don't come to meetings, but they come to all your events. So we don't track membership attendance at all. But now it's going to be optional. So if your club wants to do that, if you still celebrate the 100% attendees and, members of your club, that's important to them, then absolutely you are free to do so. But they're removing its mandatory requirement. So what you should be doing is measuring things like volunteer hours at projects, engagement on Rotary Club Central, right? Because just because I don't come to meetings every week doesn't mean I'm not a good Rotarian. I could be raising $10 million for the charity work we're doing. but because I'm not attending now, I'm not in that record. So that's why we've changed it, because people can be Rotarians in different ways. Yeah. And some of those fellas who come, or the members who come every week to lunch, just have lunch and don't do any Rotary work. So attendance in and of itself is not a criteria for being a good Rotarian anymore.
Absolutely. DTE Liz would like to know, would clubs need to officially adopt the new RI constitution with these amendments? And if they do not, can they then disregard?
No, no and no and no. Basically, RI will issue, my understanding, and again, it's my first time, so I don't know whether PDG Tony or somebody who's done this before can advise, but my understanding is that Rotary International will issue new constitution and new bylaws, which all clubs then have to adopt. It's not going to be optional. You can, of course, always add to it. And I know that there is the constitution and the bylaws are suggested by RI. But for example, you can't decide whether you're going to pay those dues or not. Those are going to be the dues, right? So that's what you're going to have to pay. Just again, to give you an example, in my club, we do not have vocational service. I'm not quite sure why, when that happened, but it sort of fell off our radar. We have Model UN on our board instead of vocational service. So, you know, there's a certain amount of flexibility, as you know, within the recommended bylaws and constitution, but some of these things are not going to be optional. So my understanding is 1st of July, you need to make the changes. And by then, hopefully, RI will have issued or be on the website the new constitution and bylaws, which is why I'm not 100% clear why you have until August to object. I did ask that question. I'm waiting for an answer from Council Services because I thought somebody may ask me that. So I am asking that question because we only got those forms about 2 weeks ago. But yeah, 1st of July, you need to, and most of them are easy and they're positive changes, right? Changing some words in your constitution and bylaws, allowing your Rotaractors to, you know, be in things. And so they're easy, nice, positive changes by and large. I think the dues is probably going to be the hardest one.
Yes. And just to clarify, the dues increase is $8 per half year.
Yes, so those figures are per half year, right? So let me just go back to it. Right. So for the new Rotary year, starting 1st of July, you'll be billed $35.50 for July to December, and then $35.50 for January to June. And then July 2023, you'll be billed $37 till December 2023, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay. And Alexander is making a comment here. He thinks that a recommended change in wording from involved in to convicted of in Article 6.050 may also be valuable. A presumption of innocence is a fundamental human right, and a determination of guilt should be left to the court of lands so that we never run afoul of the UDHR.
Right, yes. So this is where there was a lot of conversation about the whole idea of, you know, having a trial or a tribunal, or being, you know, facing your accuser, as you say, all of that innocent until proven guilty. And the RI board was pretty adamant and pretty firm on the fact that we will use the four-way test. They will use the four-way test. There will certainly always be a full and detailed inquiry. The RI board would never rush to terminate a club or terminate a member or strip a member of their status without having done a really thorough, fair, impartial inquiry and investigation, and yes, have a hearing. And a presumption of innocence, I think, is absolutely fundamental. That, in fact, that particular resolution was suspended at the beginning of the COL. Some Rotary lawyers from, there was Holland, Sweden, the United States. There were about 5 or 6 Rotarian PDGs in the room that were lawyers from different parts of the world. They went away with John Huco and a couple other directors and redid the wording of that particular enactment to make it fairer. And they added in the whole idea of having a hearing, because that was not in the original proposal from the board. So it came back to us at the end of COL for voting. So they did try and include that, you know, the sort of rules of natural justice.
Thank you. And just a comment from Lisa Van de Kamp, which I think is going to resonate with lots of clubs, that the new dues will be a challenge because in our bylaws, we cannot just raise the dues. Dues need to be decided in April. Just have to do more fundraising under Rotary and Friends. If you can share some suggestions on how clubs can handle this, how maybe do a layaway plan, for want of a better phrase. You know, I mean, for many clubs already, the invoices for next half went out already. You know, I know in my club, we now have to pull all of those back and send us amended invoice.
Yes.
How are clubs to handle this? Because this is late information coming to us.
Right. So, well, COL was in April. So this has been available for the last 6 weeks. I did send it to the district secretary. I don't know if it went out in a newsletter. I'm not sure. But anyway, to your point, you have to pay that money if you want to be a Rotarian. It's not optional. What is optional is what your club adds to that. So we know some clubs will have their own add-on administrative fee, or so if it's $39 to Rotary, some clubs may charge their members $50 and the balance comes back to the club. And of course, you're going to have district dues as well to pay July 1. So one option is maybe just for the first year to reduce the portion that the club gets. So you absorb the increase is one possibility. The other possibility, you say, is to do a fundraiser, or the club pays it up front and members get to pay the increase over the period of 12 months incrementally if they can't find it all in one go. So I do think it's important to just be very open with your clubs. As I say, if you want the 5-year forecast, I'll send it to you, because that really does help you understand the situation that RI is in and why it's made this decision. But you can't not pay that to RI. You have to look at other parts of your invoice that maybe you know, may have some flexibility in terms of what the club charges. But your district dues and your RI dues are pretty much fixed. And it's interesting that you've already invoiced members, because we generally wait till around middle of June to make sure our RI membership list is up to date. So we just had a member resign today, for example, because she's relocating. Even though I tried to tell her she can still be a member, but yeah, so we don't normally invoice our members till around middle of June, so that we know that our RI list is completely accurate. Otherwise, you know, you could end up in a bit of trouble. So it's early to invoice in May, but if that's what your club does, that's your club does. Yeah, Kevin, that's what ours says, the same thing, that dues are dues are 3 + 4th optional. So it's the RI dues, it's the district dues, it's the club admin fee, and then we also do E-Ray as an option. So when you get an invoice from my club, you've got those 4 elements.
Yeah, agreed. Well, the invoice goes out early, but the payments don't come in until in June.
Right,
So, but we try to get a jump start, as does many clubs, I'm sure. Are there any more questions? Please raise your hand or put it on the chat before we wrap up. No?
So let me just put my email address back in there, even though I know most of you have it.
So I noticed that Sean put the link to the financial projections and the list of changes on the chat. So if you haven't seen it, please go into the chat and you can copy the link from there. Or you also have the option of sending an email requesting it from PDG Lara. So if there are no more questions, PDG Lara, thank you so much for this very informative, articulate, and concise presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I encourage everyone here to read more about the changes, and as much as possible, try to incorporate the changes into your club's constitution. They were made for a reason, so let's try to facilitate that. Always a pleasure, PDG Lara.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So much. Well, always our pleasure. And I want to take this opportunity also to thank the district, especially DG Sonia, for the confidence placed in me to be the district trainer for this year. It was a learning experience for me, and I hope that our district training committee was able to help all the clubs in our district to increase their efficiency and effectiveness. Our focus this year was on capacity building and leadership development, and I hope we were able to help you in some small way to achieve those objectives. So thank you again, and I will hand the stage over to DG Sonia to have the last word. DG.
Is she there still? She's gone. Oh, there she is. She was at the beach briefly.
Oh Lord, finally, this frantic gesticulations that I can't unmute myself was just not working very well. So folks, PDG Lara, in her usual thorough style, really took us through what happens at the COL. I can't imagine the months and months of preparation and the things to read and the back and forth, because I was hearing on the other hand from the chairman of the COL, who was Director Peter Kyle, about all the things that were happening and what was going to happen and how contentious it was going to be. And he was preparing for steeling himself for what would be a very a battle at the COL. So thank you, PDG Lara, for your usual style and putting it simply for us and really helping us to understand, one, what happens at the Council on Resolutions and what happens at the COL. You truly represent us beautifully at those meetings, and I know that the voice of District 7030, and I would dare say 7020 and 7000 were part of your thoughts, because we share the same sort of area. Thank you to all of you Rotarians who came out to this session. This is an extremely important session for clubs. This information is certainly has to be disseminated again to the members so that they understand exactly what's happening, where we're going in Rotary, and what are the things that have to be done to keep us current in our constitutions, our bylaws, and just generally for us, our Rotary information. This is, as the trainer Luana said, our last training session of this year. I have to really thank Luana and the team for truly giving life to my vision. We had really wonderful sessions throughout the year. The pets, prior to the start of this year, covered what we need to know as we make this journey through our Rotary lives. These sessions are not just for presidents and president-elects and secretaries, and it's for every Rotarian. And every Rotarian needs to take these opportunities of using these online sessions to learn about Rotary, to become more familiar, and to really have a grasp of this organization that we serve. So I want to thank Luana and the team for really executing, again, very concisely and precisely. Sean, as usual, for being behind the scenes and keeping everybody in check. This has certainly been his hallmark from as the communications chair, and really making sure that we're on point. The translators, this could not have been done without you. Every time that these sessions come on, we have to have, you are such an important part of these sessions, because we do want to make sure that the information is communicated to our French colleagues so that they are just as informed as the rest of the district. We are a district that is extremely diverse, and it is a challenge to be able to engage and keep everyone engaged. But I am happy that we were able to do so during these sessions. This will probably be the last time, well, no, the district awards, you'll hear me again, but this is truly an opportunity for me to thank all of you for coming on, for those who have attended every session, because some of these names have been at every single training session. And you are richer for having joined the sessions, and I wish you extreme success in your future journeys. Thank you so much, and I hand you back to Luana and her team.
Thank you, DG Sonia. Thanks again to everyone who supported us, my district team, and of course, Sean behind the scenes and Natalie and her team. But we couldn't do it without all of you. So, and to you who always came out, like DG said. So please continue to stay safe. If you have any questions, feel free to email PDG Lara, and we'll see you when we see you.